We are live and in living color. I am Taco Z. This is the first episode, and I'm going to be covering 7 films that I've watched in the last week. The first of those films being Kill Bill Volume 1 by Quentin Tarantino. And right now we're just scrolling through my letterbox, and wow, I mean, like, what a movie to start off with. And coming into this, I was a fan of Tarantino, and I had actually seen Kill Bill Volume 1. And I think when I originally saw it, I did not fully appreciate what is the talent that Tarantino brings to the screen. And I mean, just right off the bat, and just a heads up, I'll probably go into spoiler territory for all the movies that I'll be talking about, which I'll review right now, just in case, and hopefully I can format this so that you can jump around to movies if there's certain ones that you don't want spoiled in any way. But the movies that I'll be going over are Kill Bill Volume 1, Paddington, Adaptation, M, Phantom Thread, Dirty Harry, and Night of the Demons, which that'll be an interesting one to go over. And then, last but not least, Kill Bill Volume 2. So, great way to start and end it. You might have seen the initial reviews right then as I was going through them. But Kill Bill Volume 1, the violence is so insanely stylized, um, which is like a fan of action. The crazy 88 fight scene was so like top tier action scenes. Um, in recent memory, it was probably the best fight scene. And the ending where she finally fought, I believe it's Michelle Wu's character, was just chef's kiss. Just absolutely great way to end that. I mean, we're literally going through like the mini bosses, and then Lucy Liu. That is my mistake there. But to go through the schoolgirl looking character, and then the bald guy, and absolutely just insane, intense. That whole thing is beautifully done. Um, and how it goes from color to black and white and then back to color. Um, I love that aspect from Tarantino in both films. Um, I'm just going to put the trailer on in the background as I talk about this, but just insanely good. Um, and, you know, that scene was my favorite from the whole movie, and really felt like, let's give credit to Miramax here. Um, that scene was amazing. Plus, when she went to see Vivia A. Fox's character, um, that was absolutely tremendous. I love like a lot of the little details that like you know, Vivier Fox had her gun in a cereal box that said "Kaboom" on it. Um, love the outfit from the bride in this first film, paying homage to Bruce Lee with the the leather, yellow and black. But this fight scene with Vivier Fox was dynamite. It establishes all the main characters super well. The shots were beautiful, the colors were beautiful, the music was pretty cool. By the way, this scene here where the daughter comes in and they both just act like nothing's wrong, just superb filmmaking. Um, then getting the Hanzo sword was a really interesting twist, and again, where we are establishing the characters who were to come in volume two. I thought that was like super duper well done. But again, the way that it's established, where she just freaking mows through the crazy 88 was fantastic. The whole thing is just great. And then when she's like basically breakdancing and just cutting legs off, the stylized violence, I don't know if anyone has done it better than Tarantino. And, I'd be willing to, look at and listen to comments below. Like, who do you think? Because if someone does it better than Tarantino, that's a film that I definitely want to watch. And ultimately, it's a story about revenge. And it might be, you know, including volume one and volume two, the best revenge story that I can come up with. And there might be some recency bias there, um, but that's definitely my perspective. I love the order that the story is told, and again, it has a similar. I'm not sure how to put it, but like almost like Phoenix Rising formula, um, where she's basically, completely immobilized, paralyzed, and has to fight her way back, gain strength to then take on each individual assassin. It's so cool. I'm a big fan of Volume 1, also a fan of Volume 2. Some people say they're two completely different movies. Yeah, I mean, I would agree, but you still have that spirit from the first one in the second one. And I don't know if you like the first one, I would say you're definitely gonna like the second one, and vice versa. Don't know if you'd watch it out of order, but whatever. Um, it's a genre that I'm trying to get more and more acquainted to, and I've been watching Kurosawa, and Yojimbo is I believe the second of his films that I've watched. And shout out to HBO Max for having Kill Bill Volume 1, Volume 2, and a lot of Kurosawa's collection on there. Um, but if you like these, that would be a definite recommendation that you should get into. But Kurosawa, it's really made me appreciate the genre as a whole. And like I said, I had seen, I believe, both of these movies as a younger, like a kid, basically. Didn't really appreciate what it was going for, but after years, um, definitely see what it was trying to do, and I thought it did so beautifully. And there's so many callbacks. I mean, I'm not like super experienced to the genre, but there's a scene, I think it was even in the trailer, where Uma Thurman like basically spanks a kid and says you shouldn't be, joining the yakuza. And I think that's like a paying homage in the movie Yojimba, where Yojimba sees a kid prior to joining one of the groups, and then at the end he spares him and says like, go back and eat gruel with your mother. um, Tarantino's clearly a student of film, and I think from interviews, you probably have seen him like basically be a Rolodex of film history, and it shows in his films. And um, definitely one of the differences from the movies that I kind of was able to appreciate first, Reservoir Dogs, and I would even say Pulp Fiction, is the dialogue and the script kind of has these beats where it's like a quicker tempo, and it leaves you like entranced listening to the characters talk to each other. And this one I think is almost like it's slower in the way that the characters talk, but there's more meaning on every word. Um, and I really like that Tarantino was kind of able to do that. I think it showed um, that he's able to kind of hit all over the spectrum, and that he has like a lot of different shades that he can show, and a lot of tools in his toolbox. I've heard that as a criticism to him. That's like, oh, it's always like this fast talking dialogue that people seem to like, but it gets tiring to them. I would say, I mean, if you like violence too, this film would be the one to pivot towards if you find that tiresome, because the dialogue's definitely a lot different, and it's equally as impactful. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Um, as you can see, I rated it 5 out of 5 stars. I'd stand by that. It's a classic. I think it's one of the greats. And as someone who's starting to appreciate this genre more, one that I mean I would rewatch anytime. Definitely a great movie. So we're gonna go back to the profile, see which movie we're gonna talk about next, and let's see which one is next. I think it's Paddington, but let's go and see. A lot of good movies this week, but I do think Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2 stick out as the best so far. So yes, I was correct. Paddington is the next movie that I saw. Watched it on April 3rd. Let's go ahead and play that funky trailer. Um, so yeah, it's not a Winnie the Pooh movie, which I coming in, I thought it might have been that. I thought it was like the story of Winnie the Pooh and how he was born, and how he's a real life person that actually exists in the wild. And surprisingly, no, that is not the case. Winnie the Pooh is actually a made up character. But this one, movie clips, just giving the shout out if you want to go watch the trailer yourself, that is where you'd see it. But it's a good coming of age tale. Paddington, and we're gonna get into spoiler territory right away because why fool around? But he's in darkest Peru, I believe, is where his home base was, and he loses his uncle. And the aunt decides when the uncle dies, that's the perfect time to get rid of the kid. She doesn't want anything to do with him anymore. She's actually pretty mean about the whole thing and says, like, kind of like one of those, I forget what the movie is, where it's like, go on, go. The little kid tells the dog like to run away. He can't have him anymore, and just like really meanly tells the dog to go. That's basically what she does with her nephew, um, whose parents had died when he was just a young little bear. And that's all joking, of course. She's nice about it, but I did just think, no, that's the perfect time that he should leave to go to London because an explorer had come to basically discover this brand of bear, and he had said, like, warm welcome anytime you come. It must have been well in the past because he is not there. He gets picked up by this family. It's very fish out of water. He doesn't understand how any household items work or anything, and why should he? I mean, he's grown up in darkest Peru in a tree eating marmalade the whole time. Um, but like a lot of the gags, like this gag is absolutely, I thought it was funny. For a kids movie, the humor is quite on point. So if you have like younger relatives or kids and you want to watch a movie with them, I would say this because I think it's one that you'll probably enjoy, and a lot of people say that the sequels are good as well, although I can't attest to that myself. Um, here's this video auto played, but definitely go check out Ollie Mills if you want to watch the rest of this video. Go back to the profile and click on not just my review, but the actual film itself. Like what I said in the review, not Winnie the Pooh. I mentioned how there's like this weird logic in the movie where there's like two different camps of people who act like it's strange that there's a bear out doing human things, and then like other people who like they know how bears are, like there's like stereotypes for bears just out in in the city of London. I wonder if the sequels explain any of this. Because it's a little weird, but like it's played for humor, so you can kind of get both sides of it, and it's not like a plot hole that bothered me, but yeah, it's just something to mention, I guess. The humor is really good, like I said. Transitions, what I really liked is there was, I believe, two like transitions. One was like the caretaker slash maid slash housekeeper of the Brown family, which is the family that takes Paddington in and even names him, is having a thought, and it has like the clouds or thought bubbles that you would see like in comic strips. CGI'd, it comes out and then it zooms into her thought bubbles to like show you what she's imagining, which I thought was super duper slick, really cool. I don't know if I've ever seen that in film before, and it's a really good idea, and it was well executed, which is what matters a lot. If you do it poorly, then it just doesn't come off whatsoever. Um, and the second one was a projector screen, like on that thing that you pull down. I guess like it goes whenever you pull it down to like unravel it. It is playing a projection of the explorer visiting darkest Peru, and Paddington had lost his home. He's getting to see footage of the home that he remembers, and he walks up straight to the screen. And it was kind of rude because he's definitely covering a lot of the screen for the other people who had never seen his home, which is something to think about, Paddington, because, you know, it was a film for everyone to watch. And he was covering definitely a good chunk of the projection when he went straight up to the screen like that. I can imagine if someone did that in a movie theater, and the screen was nowhere near as big as how, like, the screen that you would see in a theater. Let's say a small theater. Some guy in the front row just walks up to the screen. You're not going to be too happy about that. The only good thing is that no one had to pay for this screening. But anywho, walks right up to it and then walks through the screen. The film was in black and white. When he walks through it, it's in color. just as how he had imagined it. It was pretty cool. Color palette was really nice. You had like a nice, like warm yellows and reds, um, in like pinks and rose reds. Very, very colorful and a nice, watch. And the CGI of the bear was pretty, pretty good. Didn't really see any flaws. I think at the beginning, I was like, I mean, you know what CGI going in as an adult and how they kind of like they made sure to separate the physical actors from the bears who were CGI'd in. I'm like, okay, I kind of realized they're doing this because it might make it really difficult if they interact too much. But I mean, I that's not really a critique or a bad thing about the CGI. They just wanted to make it look as realistic as possible. So it's like, let's not compound the difficulty of our jobs with that. And then also the villain who I had her name in mind, but I forget it now. It was once I see who Nicole Kidman. There she is. She was the villain. Spoiler alert: the daughter of the explorer who discovered the bears in the wild at first. It was pretty cliche. I don't know what would be a better way. I was kind of just vibing to the story itself at first, and which is kind of a critique that I'm going to have on a different movie moving forward, although not as extreme with this one. But it was like very 1001 Dalmatians, I thought. Like a little cliche, but I like it was well done. It wasn't done terribly, but I don't know. I kind of I like the family drama more than that, but I understand they kind of had to add that to spice it up and to add to the runtime because I think without it, this movie might have been able to clear 60 minutes. Um, but yeah, and got to put butts in the seats for at least an hour 30 if you're going to get that full ticket price, if you know what I mean. But good film. I'd give it a 7 out of 10 or 3.5 stars out of 5. And let's jump back to the profile to see what movie we're going to go over third. But yeah, definitely if you got kids or little siblings or relatives, Paddington is definitely a good movie to watch. Okay, right on time. Adaptation. Charlie Kaufman, you're a madman. That's all I gotta say about that. The movie, probably the most thought provoking movie I have seen ever. Um, Movie clips, classic trailers. If you want to go see this trailer yourself, and try Vimeo too. That is what I am using currently. Columbia Film. First of all, Nicolas Cage plays it pretty damn good. Um, he's a fucking amazing actor. That never in doubt, right? I think people who have seen him in some of his sillier films still understand that. I mean, he is an all-time great actor, and he does double duty in this movie, a la um, Eddie Murphy in. I believe the title of the movie is Funky Family. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I think that's the movie where he plays the whole family. Funky Family, starring Eddie Murphy. But this one is just two characters. He plays twin brothers, Donald and Charlie Kaufman. Charlie is the actual screenwriter of this film, and being John Malkovich, which is brought up as part of the timeline of this film. and it's I think you could explain it really easily, but explaining the aspects of what works so well for this film is it's a challenge for sure because it's very in depth, it's very meta, it's super self-referential, and it's Charlie Kaufman kind of showing off um, his storytelling skills without a doubt. I mean, it's like basically doing like a quadruple backflip after hitting the ramp. It's like, let me show off for you. Let me show you what I got. Um, so moving away from Nicolas Cage and Meryl Streep, who definitely plays her role, which is the author of the book that this film was supposed to be adapting. Okay. And man, it's to explain it like that would be doing no justice to the story because the story is more so of Charlie Kaufman trying to take a book which is about orchids and a guy who found a very rare, I guess, breed of orchids and kind of the life lessons that came through the author's journey of trying to find this super rare orchid in that sometimes we don't like that end goal is sometimes nice to have as it'll kind of push us and motivate us and inspire us to do something, but sometimes that end goal does not exist, which I think was the point of the actual book, The Orchid Thief, by Susan Orlean. So the first two thirds kind of go over that, and the writing is super duper philosophical and profound. A lot of the stuff it says, like it really did. It sat with me. It made me think. Like the author really truly wanted to kind of find something that was such like an inspiration that let me go back. Sorry about that. She wanted to find something that inspired her the way that Chris Cooper, I believe, played by John LaRoche, or I got that mixed up. John LaRoche, played by Chris Cooper, was inspired by the orchid because she was kind of finding herself uninspired in her New York life at the New York Times, and that she kind of wanted something to reinvigorate her. And she thought this man, John LaRoche, was super interesting. And I think she was kind of envious of the way that he was able to like fully dive into his passions. And I think she like kind of got to that point by writing about him, but that maybe it wasn't quite as fulfilling as she had thought it would be. At least that's how I kind of look at it. And honestly, any opinions, theories are welcome in the comments because I think this is one of those types of movies where you can really come out of it having thought a number of different things, and whatever stuck with you might be the point that you come away with. Whereas I think it's packed with meaning. Um, and then we kind of get to the point. I mean, throughout the whole thing, Kaufman slash Nicolas Cage's character is just stumped and finds it nearly impossible to try and adapt this book into a movie. And he's trying to keep it true to the book. And the book is just such a unique book, but, you're able to kinda get away with certain liberties in writing that don't quite transition to movies, and that's kind of the point that he's getting to. And there is a scene in the beginning of the movie, which was in the trailer, where Nicolas Cage is just absolutely sweating bullets. It looks like he spent an hour 20 in the hot sauna with Joe Rogan, cranking that baby up to 180, just sweating, uncomfortably so. He says, I want to keep it true to the book. I don't want there to be, this to be about a relationship. I don't want it to be a drug smuggling book. And then we get into the final third, where that is exactly what the movie becomes. Funny enough. Um, Charlie Kaufman is inspired by his brother, Donald, to go to a screenwriting presentation from someone who is selling the secret spices as to how to become a great screenwriter, and kind of wakes Kaufman up to the fact that so much goes on in life. You trying to keep your screenplay grounded in reality, you're kind of dismissing all the emotions and all the insane actions that life exhibits every day. You know, I think he said, a man dies for his country every single day. Like, you don't find that um, like interesting, then you're not living life right. And I think that's something that the script, or the movie rather, shows quite nicely as things just really ramp up in the last third of the movie. There's drugs, there's sex, there's no rock and roll, unfortunately, but we find Meryl Streep's character in a relation with John LaRoche, the character in the movie, and it gets wild that Meryl Streep and John LaRoche try to take down the Kaufman twins, and really interesting. And Donald, the twin brother of Charlie, leaves him with a message, which is pretty relevant because Charlie had kind of a love interest at the beginning that he was really scared to act on, and Donald says, you know, even though he was embarrassed by a crush in the past, it's like that was his love. Like, he got to experience that emotion. And even if they don't reciprocate that, it doesn't mean that they can take it away from you. And there's so many feelings in life that you shouldn't try to avoid just because other people might not like that you feel that. You shouldn't let the opinions of others influence you experiencing life to the fullest, is what I got out of it. It's a pretty good message. And we leave the movie with Charlie um, going after the girl that he loved and actually expressing himself to her, and she reciprocates it. But at the end of the day, whether she did in real life or not, it doesn't matter because he finally went out on a limb and wasn't scared as he had been the entire movie. A really cool film. The plot, just going through the bullet points of the plot, don't do it justice. Clearly, anyone who's watched it, you'll probably be cringing the entire time I explain it. One of the aspects that I thought was really cool was the brother, because he is kind of written to take the plot where it needs to go. Um, Charlie Kaufman does not really have a twin brother, and he kind of inspires Charlie to do the major turning points of the movie, the major actions that he needs to do to go see the author, to talk to her, to get them to go to Florida, um, and to finally go talk to the girl that he was formerly scared to talk to. And I it makes me wonder, they're just very slight variations of each other. They're twins. They both are screenwriters by the end. And I wonder if Donald is the vision that Charlie wishes he could be. Someone who doesn't take his screenplays too seriously, or if he's just someone to progress the plot forward. That's something I would like to hear your comments on. Because I do think, I mean, Donald just seems more at peace and happier with himself than Charlie does, maybe barring the very end. And that was my interpretation of it. Um, but it's an amazing movie. I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5. I'd give it a solid 9. Definitely a movie to check out. Next, we're going to be going to the German movie M, and I believe M stands for murderer, child murderer, which is um, in our society probably the worst um, title you could be given or label that you could be given. And my biggest takeaway from this movie is I understand where the hype for Peter Lorre comes from. He was someone I had heard, I think from a podcast. I think it was last podcast on the left, but they were like Peter Lorre, or it might have been a movie or what have you, a documentary. Um, they said you want to check out a character actor who is like absolute peak. Peter Lorre is the guy to check out. Came into this movie blind, really didn't have much background, didn't even know it was in German. Um, so I came into this movie not knowing it was Peter Lorre, but he was someone who immediately, from this scene, grabbed your attention. It's he has a face that is like you want to stare at in the weirdest way possible. And then he exhibits like such emotion in the scenes, and especially in the ending scene where he's pretty much pleading his case. You're like, not that any of the other characters are bad. He just stands head and shoulders above every other actor in this movie, that it's just like this guy is on a different freaking level. He was the standout performance. He was basically the big takeaway from this movie. And then, in theory, this movie, I think it's still like super duper prevalent today and has like a lot of themes that still are just as meaningful. Um, if you want to go check out this trailer on your own, BFI, shout out to them. Go check it out there. But some of the themes are like there's a really poignant scene where there are beggars on the streets working with the criminal element in this city. Uh, the kind of like mob bosses are put out by Peter Lorre's character because there are now police crackdowns trying to find this guy, and the beggars are The people who they found could be on the street surveilling without being noticed. Which, hey, if you're ever trying to do like a citywide crackdown again, that's a pretty ingenious idea, honestly. They hear the murder's whistle and they have their mark, and they mark him with by putting I think it's chalk on their hand and then slapping it on his coat, or yeah. So he is physically labeled with an M, and I kind of think that's like symbolism for the worst of worst crimes being someone who preys on children. And like, it's so bad, it's so evil that even criminals find it to be inexcusable. And that ties into, this is someone who is clearly possessed to do these crimes against his will. And he pleads this very well near the end of the movie, that it's not something he wants to do. He almost falls into a trance. And it's like, in our justice system, are we too lenient on people like this, or do they ultimately deserve to be punished for this? And trying to get into the mind of a killer like that, especially one where the motivations don't really make sense to us. We kind of come at our decisions on in a logical action, and we try to come at it in a logical way. It's like there might be um, a detachment there. It might not make clear sense to kind of look at it like if the actions were done by someone in the right state of mind. And I think that's definitely something to think about. Then there's kind of the themes of, it's like, how much freedom should you be willing to give up to avoid a terrible thing happening? And this is super duper prevalent in America, at least, probably in other places of the world. I mean, America, it had the Freedom Act, where, a lot of your privacy is given up to try to avoid atrocities from happening. And is this a good or fair trade? And that's something where it's like, this movie came out almost 100 years ago, but that type of debate is just as prevalent now. And it's kind of mind blowing to have themes that resonate so clearly so far after the fact. And then the last two themes that I really picked up on, vigilantism, which, it's like, should we have people trying to give street justice? I think clearly the film does not think that that's like a true form of justice, because what we think is fair and what we think is right is definitely circumstantial and can change very much based on each situation. And the last one I think is the death penalty, because that's pushed very heavily by the criminals who have found the bad guy, Peter Lorre, and you have people pleading both ways, but it's like, should you be treated for a sickness, or should you be punished for the acts that you did by being sick? And honestly, I think there's a fairly even split in how people feel about that today. And if you have any emotional attachment to something, I think punishment is the way that you're going to swing on that debate. And honestly, it's well within your rights to feel like that, because if you have a loved person die, seeing them, in a hospital bed being catered and given meals for the rest of their life might not feel fair to you. But at the end of the day, what is fair in that situation? Um, I came at it with nitpicks. I don't know. I'd have to rewatch. Nothing. I don't think anything really detracted from the rating. And again, this was the film that I think launched Peter Lorre's career. And you see these films which are just transcendent. They can be in a foreign language, and people will still manage to just absolutely command your attention. Peter Lorre fits the bill. So I'm not surprised in the least that he became an American superstar after this film. The next film that I'm going to be going over is Phantom Thread. Um, Paul Thomas Anderson, PTA, and DDL are back at it again. This is a super strong movie, one I was really, really happy that I watched. It might be a little bit slow for some people. I understand that. Um, let's see what the runtime was. I know it was, yeah, it's 2 hours, 10 minutes. Some of that might be, credits, what have you. And let's go pop up that trailer real quick. But, you know, There Will Be Blood, I think, was DDL's strongest performance. And I really loved him in Gangs of New York. And that's maybe the runner up. But he's very, very good in this. Um, but I don't like Zero Media. Shout out to them. Go check out the trailer if you want to watch it with sound on their channel. But I believe her last name is Krebs, and I'll go to the kind of film page after we're done with this trailer. But she did not get outshone. So this character, this waitress, becomes, and obviously, spoilers for everything. I said that at the beginning, but just want to make sure everyone's on the same page. She does not get outshone, and to like really like basically, you know, freaking stay in the ring with Daniel Day Lewis and stick with him the whole way. Kudos to her. And I wouldn't be surprised if she starts getting some really serious, some really big roles because she nailed her role to a T. Uh, in my opinion, this may be controversial, what have you. I'd like to hear anyone else's take. I thought she was the one who shined brightest in this film, and whether that was driven by the plot, whatever, she was great. Um, Basically, where this movie comes from is Daniel Day Lewis is like obsessed with work in a really weird way, like to the point where his first date with this lady ends with his sister coming over and like fitting her for a dress. It's like that insanely committed to his craft. Which is like a really interesting character study for Paul Thomas Anderson. And it seems to be the type that he really likes to explore in his movies. We kind of saw that in There Will Be Blood. Um, this is like, I don't know if a softer approach where he's very career driven, but it's not like in a cutthroat way. He's not trying to like take people down to build himself up. It's just something that he's like obsessed with. And I think it comes from his past. He mentions he basically got started because he made a dress for his mother. His sister was linked in that, and it almost becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like bad luck to touch a dress before you're married. So him and his sister are clearly at an advanced age. I don't know if they ever say how old they are, but they are yet to wed. And I mean, you could argue that is the case because they live their work, where basically every waking minute is devoted to this craft. Um, and then enter this, love interest of Daniel Day Lewis, Vicky. I'm gonna butcher this. Krebs, who plays Alma Elson. She's his waitress. They quickly go on a date. She gets to meet the sister while she's in her bra and undergarments, which is a classic comedy trope where you meet the sister while you're in your bra and undergarments on the first date. I think it happens pretty frequently, so pretty funny to insert that in there. But I mean, a clear indication that these people like are just freaking crazy about their work and don't like have boundaries when it comes to it. And we kind of get to the point where, oh, is Daniel Day Lewis, who is Reynolds Woodcock, is he going to change his way for Vicky? And, throughout maybe the first half, seems like, oh, maybe, but then he just is kind of he's set in his ways where he really doesn't get to that point. And it seems as though he is going to kick her out. She then, through the teachings of, I think, someone who worked on the house, there's workers, like dozens of people who work for Mr. Woodcock, is he's probably like one of the top dressmakers in the world when in this movie. So he has people working for him at all times. Um, she basically poisons him, but not lethally so, just enough to where he's basically just bedridden, puking his guts out, and unable to work on a very big project, which is a dress for a princess who is to be wed. And man, for anyone who's gone through food poisoning, that is a pretty brutal payback, sis. That's all I got to say about that. I mean, when it's coming out of both ends at high velocity, not something that is fun to deal with. And Daniel Day Lewis is like basically in a fever dream and even sees his mom, which is something that we're going to come back to, who had passed away. Something we're going to come back to at the tail end of this. Um, this kind of, you know, their relationship, uh, you know, Reynolds and Elma, their relationship kind of like progresses like huge, like exponentially in the time that he's sick. It's kind of like months of them, dating really never covered the ground that like these few days of him being sick did. Like they really bonded and their relationship grew really, really fast during this time because he doesn't really let himself, not that he doesn't let himself, but he can't become attached to people when he's living his work, and he was so sick he couldn't work, so he was actually able to connect with someone on a human way that he hadn't been able to do probably since he was a child. Um, this is when he decides to marry her. He said it was important. He had to break the curse of basically the dress that he had made for his mother, which I think is a huge um, plot point that I kind of would like to hear opinions on. And, whether being sick is what made him realize it or if it was something he always wanted to break, I don't know, because his motivations very much don't seem to be that of someone who was trying to break the curse. It kind of seemed quite the opposite. Like how I had said, self fulfilling prophecy. His actions were very much leading um, to outcomes that would not lead towards marriage. And things look fine and dandy. She's almost kind of Elma is almost demanding he take the further step. It's like we're married, but you're not quite treating me like a wife. Like, just giving me a ring doesn't make up for the fact that you're being an asshole now. It wasn't like a fix all. And she's kind of demanding that they have that relationship that a husband and wife should. And there's pushback from Mr. Woodcock. He's not a big fan of that. He kind of wanted to go back to business as usual, and he's on the verge of basically kicking her out again and says so much to his sister. Which let's give some kudos to her. She definitely played her role very, very well. And now we're like very close to the end of the movie. We're seeing Elma make dinner for him again, and it has the same mushrooms that like made him sick as a dog before. And he's kind of looking at her like he understands, and it's like I can't wait to see the blow up because a Daniel Day Lewis blow up is like nothing else in cinema history. He has the intensity that will make anyone fear him. And lays the plate down. He takes a bite, and basically, it's like it's almost revealed there. She reveals to him, like, you're going to be sick and you're going to be like bedridden. And he's like understanding of it and like almost encouraging it. And it was like a pretty huge plot twist because I thought this was going to be like a moment of conflict, and it's like this huge twist that it's like he wants that excuse to get away from work to be catered to by her, and I think he likes like being able to be vulnerable, but he like needs the green light to actually do so. So he's like, yeah, he's just cool. He just eats the poisoned eggs, and it was a tremendous payoff. I thought, for how slow people might have thought the movie was, the payoff justified it, and leads me to one of my theories, which is, did he also like it because it allowed him to see his mother again, or was it more growth than that, where it was he was beyond that now and wanted to have that special time with his wife now. Something I would like to hear your opinions on, for sure. Let's go to the next film. We'll try to hit the big points of these. Dirty Harry next. Um, it was a film that, if there was a cop that existed like Dirty Harry now, good luck, man. I mean, there would be riots. He would be. I mean, if you thought the cop that did OJ would be bad, I'm telling you, after that bank robbery scene, which again, spoilers, but after that bank robbery scene, that guy is there's no way people are going to be really upset about that. Um, I don't. You couldn't remake this film the same way. Not that you'd have to. It was really well done, but it's a take on the movie Zodiac, where Dirty Harry is getting closer and closer to the bad guy or the Scorpio's thread, or not thread, tail, throughout the entirety of the movie. It's the WB. Really liked, the shots of the city. I thought it looked, I mean, and probably just because of filming location and time period, like the type of equipment, reminded me a lot of A Dog Day Afternoon. But the Scorpio in this movie is he's a take on the Zodiac. He's not exactly like the Zodiac at all, but he leaves letters. But the Scorpio is a sniper slash gunman, and this is the bank robbery scene that I'm referring to. Wonderfully over dramatic. Um, is there like realism to it? Not a lot, but is it like tremendous cinema? Yes, absolutely it is. Um, so very entertaining the whole way through. The Zodiac is just barely escaping capture by any means necessary, really, and trying to, once it becomes known that Callahan slash Dirty Harry is hot on his tail and isn't going to be an easy guy to get rid of. He starts even plotting against him, framing him for beatings and saying that he's basically stalking him, whatnot. Once he's almost caught, um, so it's a really good cat and mouse movie, and really gets into the motivations of being a police officer, and even though it's like this scene really brings it up, Harry is committed to justice, um, even if it's difficult for him and the people around him, um, which is like definitely a big message from this movie, and that's why he can't let the Scorpio get away with it because the city is kind of acquiescing to the demands of the killer, which kind of flies in the face of what Dirty Harry stands for, to the point that we get to an ending in which he goes against orders for his version of justice and kind of gives up his career to do so. Um, Great movie. Uh, Not that I'm going to be the first person to say this. Clint Eastwood is absolutely dynamite in this movie, and it's a famous performance by him. And man, no one looks cooler in a pair of shades than Clint Eastwood. That is for certain. And I think even the villain did pretty good in this movie. I was kind of interested to see where his career went after this. But I like, as far as really popular movies, not that I'm super duper knowledgeable in 70s movies, as that's a little bit beyond my time, but I wonder what he was able to do after this. Um, some of some of the acting by him was like wildly over dramatic. But despite that, it was a great movie. 4 out of 5 stars or an 8 out of 10. Definitely one I would recommend if you're in the mood for a crime action thriller. Um, Great if you wanted to do a double feature. This and the Zodiac, I think, would be great. I think the Zodiac does spoil this movie, but I would watch Zodiac first, then this, because it'll kind of give you some of the closure that you might be missing from Zodiac. And Zodiac's one of my favorite movies, so cool subject material, pretty well done for sure. Really, really good movie. Next, I think we're going to be Night of the Demons. This one, The dialogue was pretty bad, and I'll just put on the trailer and just try to talk through that because there's not too much to say. But I think giving the visuals be good because that is the biggest takeaway from this is, dude, the makeup. Hopefully, the guy who did this makeup got some pretty big rules following this one because he was the MVP without a doubt. And shout out to Titan C. Go follow him. Go watch this video there if you want to check out the trailer. Um, saw it on, I think HB. No, I saw it on Peacock. Pretty good. There's two characters that stand out where their acting wasn't great, but it was like passable where they were the most charismatic. It was Stooge, who's that guy. He like kind of has a mullet with like different colored lines on the sides, and then Sal, who is pretty funny, pretty cool. Um, the humor is only really good by those two, and by anyone else, not great. Um, there's like I don't know, excessive nudity might be an overstatement, but there's nudity. So if that's what you really are going for in a slasher slash scary movie, had a good bit of that. But I mean, the acting wasn't great. The script wasn't great. The only thing that really was great about this movie was the makeup. So, and even plot. Plot was pretty. You've seen a scary movie. You've came across this plot like dozens and dozens of times. So it's nothing new in that department, but some consider it a cult classic, I guess. So for the makeup alone, I would say it might be worth the watch, but it would rank low on my list of scary movies. And then we finish up with Kill Bill Volume 2. Obviously, spoilers. I'll go through the trailer of that as well. I think I'd said at the very, very beginning of this that, some consider this to be like very different than the first one. Shout out to Movie Clips, by the way. Subscribe to them and check out this video on their page if you are so inclined. Um, I felt they were relatively similar. Like like if you were to, I mean, the climax or the very end is probably maybe I don't know. Whenever it comes to the final battle, it's probably pretty different in that. But I don't know. I thought it remained pretty consistent, and I know that whenever people were saying that they weren't like critiquing one film over the other or what have you. But like I would like to get more insight onto people's takes whenever they're saying that, like how you thought like the feel or the vibe was different from volume one to volume two. Um, because I do think people who say that think both are really good, and I thought both were really good. And getting to see it's like it's one of the best revenge series of two movies ever. And damn, the revenge she gets on, I think is it Coppermouth? I have to look because it was good. She's the one missing an eye, and whew, gets the other eye taken out and basically just left to die in a in a trailer with a freaking a black mamba in there as she's blind, just like kicking around. And then was it Madsen's character? That was cool. I mean, really like coming back from the dead again, basically being buried alive, showing the training that led to her getting out. Like that scene was pretty cool. It didn't quite have the standout scene that the first one did, but I did think the plot elements were so strong, like really showing the motivation, like the script work that was done was so strong that it kind of made up for not having like the stylized violence that the first one had. Not that it doesn't. It does have stylized violence, but it didn't have the big huge set piece that the first one did. And it gets made up for with the plot points that it's able to hit. Um, so yeah, that's where we are. Going to be doing 7 movies next week as well. If you haven't already, I mean, we're an hour deep into this thing. Please be sure to give a like and subscribe, and definitely be sure to comment recommendations, movies you would like to see discussed, as well as your thoughts on any of the movies that I talked about uh, during this video. Thank you again, much appreciated, and I'll see you on the next episode.